If you grew up watching TV in the 70s, 80s, even the 90s, you grew up when sitcoms ruled the airwaves. Each week, we would visit and laugh with our favorite characters. By appointment, mind you, unless you were part of the lucky ones who had a VCR and could tape your shows to watch later. But I digress. Sitcoms and the network branding around them were a massively influential part of the entertainment landscape before the internet appeared. But occasionally, these situational comedies would take a beat and address serious, sensitive issues with a touch of humor added to the story. These were called very special episodes, and I kid you not, most of them used a laugh track. My previous video titled The Top 10 Very Special Episodes That Traumatized 80s Kids really hit a nerve with my audience, and the comment section was filled with recollections of many other very special episodes that made it clear to me we have never forgotten these shows that attempted to teach us valuable life lessons. The good thing is, I was ready to make a follow-up before I even posted the first video, because there were way more than 10 very special episodes to talk about, and I knew that going in. So today, we are going to cover all of those episodes and more. Welcome to the most WTF very special episodes that Gen X will never forget.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
The Facts of Life was a Different Strokes spinoff that centered on students at Eastland, an all-girls private school in upstate New York. During its 9 seasons, the show explored a lot of the issues facing 80s kids, especially young girls. Notable episodes featured topics like drugs, teen prostitution, child porn, and the pressure of sex. But for this video, we're going to talk about Breaking Point, perhaps the most serious very special episode that put a spotlight on teen suicide. The episode opens with Blair awaiting the results of the student council president election. As the most popular girl in school, she seems like a sure thing to beat the new girl, Cynthia. Cynthia's dad is some kind of big deal diplomat, and she moves around a lot, but her dad wants her to settle in at Eastland and be a teenager. Surprisingly, Cynthia wins the election, and this does not sit well with Blair, who acts standoffish. But Natalie is eager to interview Cynthia for the school paper. Tootie tags along, and all seems well until they find Cynthia unconscious next to an empty bottle of pills. Mrs. Garrett and the girls bake in the kitchen while they wait to hear if Cynthia is okay. They wonder why she would try to kill herself, and then Joe reveals one of her friends actually did by jumping off the school between classes, which for some reason gets a laugh from the audience.
She'll be okay. She didn't really want to kill herself anyway.
What makes you say that?
She set it up so you guys would find her. If she was really serious, she would have done it like my friend Gloria back home. She jumped off the school roof between history class and home ec.
Despite the awkward laughs, the scene does contain good information on teen suicide, including the fact that it happens every day. But sadly, a call comes in revealing the news that Cynthia did not survive. Mrs. Garrett and the girls clean out her room and continue to discuss what may have triggered Cynthia to take her own life. Mrs. Garrett tells them it's okay to feel confused, frightened, and insecure as part of the pressures of being a teenager. She encourages the girls to talk about their problems. Blair then takes over as the president of student council and decides to use her new clout to set up a hotline for troubled teens. As they all leave, Mrs. Garrett shuts off the lights and the camera lingers on Cynthia's dorm room full of packed up boxes filled with her belongings. This powerful episode saw the girls all have realistic emotional reactions to the situation, and there was some excellent true life wisdom dispensed by Mrs. Garrett. Breaking Point might have saved a few lives. All in the Family was a groundbreaking 1970s sitcom from Norman Lear, and it was one of the first to bring us a very special episode, even though the show's primary audience was adults. In Season 8, a 2-part episode titled Edith's 50th Birthday aired in October of 1977, and it depicted a man who posed as a police detective attempting to assault Edith on her 50th birthday. We all remember Archie's wife as being so wide-eyed and optimistic in every episode with the innocence of a child. So this episode is extremely difficult to watch. The story begins as Edith's family is next door at Gloria's preparing for a surprise birthday party, and Edith is at home alone when the man shows up at the bunkers and tells Edith that he is investigating sexual assaults in the neighborhood. Edith lets him in the house, but then soon realizes that the man the officer is describing to her is himself. She tries to offer him money to leave, but he pins her to the couch for an intensely awkward 5 minutes and starts undressing her while kissing her neck.
What are you gonna do? You ain't taking off your clothes, are you?
Yeah. Then I'm gonna take yours off.
Wouldn't you like a cup of coffee instead?
The hardest part to watch, though, is the moment Archie briefly pops in to grab a punch bowl while the assailant hides in the closet. You can see the terror on Edith's face as she wants to tell the man she loves to save her, and he still walks out the door completely oblivious to the circumstances.
Remember the ball we gave him there for the anniversary? Well, I don't want to make a long story out of it either, but so let me just get over it. Don't cry. It's only a fish, a little goldfish. They only cost a dime each, yeah? Keep doors closed, Edith.
But Edith finally manages to escape when a cake starts burning in her oven, and the rapist allows her to take it out. With some quick thinking, she turns it into a weapon and slams the cake in his face before running out of the house. When the police finally arrive and try to get Edith to identify the clothes of her attacker, all of the lightheartedness that was left in the episode immediately stops. Edith goes into a blind panic so unnerving and uncharacteristic of any sitcom ever that the studio audience didn't know how to respond. So they just applauded and hoped that somehow that would fix it all.
No, I'm sorry.
Please, you've got to.
No, I don't want to look at that man again.
He can't hurt you anymore.
Can you identify these clothes, ma'am?
No, I can't. No, he'll kill me. He'll kill me. He'll kill me. He'll kill me. He'll kill me.
Little House on the Prairie and its series creator, Michael Landon, legend R.I.P., was never afraid to bring the trauma during its 9 seasons. Whether telling stories about alcoholism, anti-Semitism, racism, or letting Mary's baby and Alice Garvey burn to death in a fire at the school for the blind, the long-running family drama didn't always equate wholesome with easy to watch. Never was that more apparent than with the 2-part episode titled Sylvia, which was written and directed by Landon. These episodes starred a 14-year-old Olivia Barish as a beautiful and shy young girl who is essayed by a man in a very, very creepy clown mask. Sylvia ends up pregnant after the assault, and this makes her an absolute pariah in Walnut Grove, to everyone except for Albert Ingalls, played by Matthew Labrato. Albert vows to marry Sylvia and raise the baby as his own. But sadly, Sylvia and her true love never get there happily ever after, because the sinister clown rapist, who is later revealed to be Walnut Grove's friendly blacksmith Irv, attempts to attack Sylvia again. But that time, she fell from a ladder while trying to escape and then died from her injuries. Like I said, this one was dark. Sylvia was actually a big hit with viewers, with part 2 being the 3rd most watched TV show of that entire week. And the episodes ended up being a major career milestone for Barash. She told Entertainment Weekly years later that because of Little House, she still had a really weird fan base. And she also revealed that Sylvia was originally supposed to marry Albert and become a regular character on the show. But for some reason, they decided to kill off the character after just those 2 episodes. I should note that Melissa Gilbert denies this and claims Sylvia was always supposed to be on the show for just those 2 episodes. So, who knows?
Good time. Anytime you need a payment. Good time. Anytime you need a Good time.
In the season 5 premiere of Good Times, titled The Evans Get Involved, fans met their 10-year-old neighbor Penny Gordon, played by Janet Jackson, in her first ever acting role. This whole storyline with Penny was actually a 4-episode story arc to start season 5, which is a lot to talk about, so I'm going to focus on the very first 2 episodes, which were aired as the 1-hour season premiere in September of 1977. The story begins with Penny quickly becoming friends with Willona and the Evans family after she follows JJ home. It's pretty clear right away that she's got a crush on JJ, but Penny really loves just spending time with the whole Evans family, and she feels immediately right at home. So much so that she doesn't want to leave their apartment. The Evans start to become a bit suspicious of Penny because she tells fanciful stories of her own home life. And it's not long before a shocking secret is discovered. Penny is being horribly abused by her mother.
You make me very unhappy, Penny. And you know what happens to children that make their mamas unhappy. I locked it. I knew that would be the first place you tried to hide.
Please, Mama, I promise I won't be a bad girl anymore. Please, I won't be a bad girl anymore. Please, I promise. Please.
Things go from bad to worse as the story continues into part 2. The signs of abuse become noticeably worse as the Evans discover Penny is covered in burns and has broken bones. Honestly, this episode starts to become pretty difficult to watch pretty quick. Walona tries to report her suspicions of Penny's abuse, but becomes frustrated because the doctor doesn't believe her. Then things take a complicated turn when the Gordons suddenly move out of their apartment, which marks the end of episode 2. Penny was eventually able to escape from her mom and ended up hiding in the Evans apartment. Her mom abandons her, and the story arc ends with Bologna adopting Penny after Bookman nearly ruined her interview with a social worker. This dark and difficult storyline ushered in a new era for Good Times after Esther Roll left the show at the end of season 4. Not only did Janet Jackson become a regular cast member, so did Johnny Brown, who played Bookman.
I bet we've been together for a million years.
Family Ties went straight for the very special episode, just barely into its first season, with episode 6 titled Give Your Uncle Arthur a Kiss. The focus was on the oldest Keaton daughter, Mallory, played by the amazing Justine Bateman, who, by the way, has one of the best accounts on X Twitter. Highly recommend following her. Anyways, the episode is all about a close friend of the family named Arthur, who has also been a co-worker of Stevens, the television station, for years. He's known the Keatons for so long that the kids actually call him Uncle Arthur. But in this episode, the middle-aged Arthur makes a pass at the underage Mallory with unwanted hugging, grabbing, and kissing, which of course scares and confuses her.
So if I did anything to make you think of me in any other way, I'm sorry.
Well, I apologize for jumping to any conclusions.
Your apology is totally unnecessary.
So is yours.
No hard feelings?
No hard feelings. No.
Once again, this episode is dark, but as Bateman noted, it was also a landmark episode for handling a sensitive topic way back in 1982. Mallory ends up telling her mom Elise what happened, who then reveals that she had a similar experience in her youth when a man grabbed her that left her confused and embarrassed. All of this is taking place during the TV station's pledge drive, where Stephen is preparing a farewell tribute for his friend, but Elise ends up confronting Arthur about what he did to Mallory live on the air.
What's going on?
Nothing.
It's not nothing.
Can't it wait?
Stephen, Arthur tried to seduce our daughter.
We'll be right back.
Here we are, face to face, a couple of silver spoons.
In the season 2 episode of Silver Spoons, titled A Hunting We Will Go, the story began with Rick eager to go on his first ever hunting trip with his grandpa. His dad, Edward, isn't really a big fan of the idea though, but he still reluctantly allows Rick to go on the trip. At first, Rick is having a great time outdoors with his dad and grandpa, but when the time comes and Rick has a rifle in his hand and a deer in his sights, he quickly becomes conflicted.
Dad? Did you see his eyes? His eyes. I never thought hunting would be like this. I mean, I wanted to come so bad.
Sometimes, son, getting what you want can be the worst thing that can happen to you.
As far as I could tell, this is the only very special episode that tackled the issue of hunting. When the episode began, star Joel Higgins addressed the audience and warned that the storyline could be upsetting for some young viewers, and he invited parents to watch the episode with their kids. There was also a voiceover during the end credits that assured viewers that the deer was not actually harmed in any way during the making of the episode.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
During season 3 of Facts of Life, there was an episode titled Runaway that focused on the character of Tootie, played by Kim Fields, who ends up being recruited into the world of prostitution. The episode began with Mrs. Garrett, Blair, Joe, and Natalie leaving Eastland and going on their way to catch a train to New York City as Tootie begs to join them. Her parents wouldn't give her permission to go on the trip with the older girls because they had concerns she was too young and it wouldn't be safe. Wanting to prove that she was old and mature enough to go, Tootie runs away and heads to the Big Apple on her own to surprise everyone at the theater. Tootie is able to make it on her own to the city, but she runs into a teenage girl named Christy at a diner who turns out to be a prostitute, and she tries to recruit Tootie into her line of work.
What's that all about?
Oh, just some kid from upstate. She just wandered in here.
She's got the look.
No, Mike. She's just here for the day. She's going home.
So were you.
A waitress named Bernice steps in to tell Tootie what's going on because she's too young and naive to get it. And then Tootie ends up confronting Christy and making her, quote, employer mad. Of course, in the end, Mrs. Garrett and the girls show up in time after searching for Tootie, and she manages to avoid choosing a life of crime. I guess if you want to call it crime. I don't know. Too Close for Comfort was a show about a cartoonist named Henry Rush and his wife Muriel, and they had 2 adult daughters who lived downstairs in their San Francisco 2 flat, along with a moronic tenant named Monroe, played by Jim J. Bullock. This show is usually about a bunch of wacky personalities trying to get along, but in the season 5 episode titled For Every Man There's 2 Women, things took a dark turn when Monroe didn't come home one night from his job as a mall security guard. When he finally arrives the next morning, his uniform is partially torn off and he looks shell-shocked, and it takes him quite a while to calm down and explain what happened. He eventually reveals that he was kidnapped from a parking lot and forced into a van by 2 women. Then he was taken to their apartment and he was assaulted throughout the night. But as he tells all of this to his quasi-family, clearly shaken by the experience, the studio audience laughs along.
Monroe, what do you mean that you cooperated?
I'd rather not talk about it.
Does anyone know what's going on here?
I think I do. Those 2 women were attracted to Moreau. They desired him and helped themselves.
Help themselves to what?
To Monroe. They had their way with him.
Henry eventually calls the police, who dispatches maybe the worst SVU detectives in the history of TV law enforcement, and they take some basic information and then tell Monroe it's not worth pressing charges because it would be too embarrassing. As Cracked pointed out, Too Close for Comfort built so many jokes around the assault as a concept that it was almost like the audience was filled exclusively with prison inmates. Henry and Monroe finally find and confront the women who assaulted him, and both of them are easily over 200 pounds and terrifying. It quickly becomes evident that this was a legitimate crime. Henry barely escapes before almost suffering the same fate as Monroe, and the women are arrested. Then, in one of the most unintentionally sad moments in sitcom history, Monroe thanks Henry and tells him it's nice to know that if this ever happens to him again, he will be there to help, guide, and protect him. But then Henry immediately tells him that if it happens again, he's completely on his own.
You know, this experience has taught me a very valuable lesson. And it's nice to know that if I ever get in trouble again, you'll be right there beside me to see me through, no matter how rough it might be.
It's nice to know you feel that way, Monroe.
Well, I certainly do.
That you're not even close.
Now the world don't move to the beat of just one drum.
Hitchhiking was a thing back in the 70s and early 80s, which I honestly never understood, but the topic was tackled in an ABC after-school special and a very special episode of Different Strokes, so it must have been dangerous for kids and teens at the time. In season 6 of Different Strokes, the 2-part episode titled The Hitchhikers started off with Mr. Drummond warning his kids about the dangers of hitchhiking, which Arnold and Kimberly completely ignore, and they immediately decide to thumb a ride not long after getting this talk from their dad when they wind up short on cash and refuse to swallow their pride and call home to get a ride. A man named Bill stops and offers to take them home, and he seems friendly enough, but Then he makes a wrong turn and takes the kids to his house to hold them captive. It gets so much worse from there, though, because Different Strokes was the GOAT of very special episodes. With Kimberly and Arnold locked in this guy's house, Bill drugs Arnold and then tries to seduce Kimberly. Despite being drugged, though, Arnold manages to escape and make his way home. Arnold then tells his family what happened, and they race to make it to Kimberly in time before Bill can assault her.
No, no.
The episode ended with a message from star Conrad Bain telling the audience that if you know of a case of sexual assault or an attempted SA, please contact your local law enforcement agency or emergency medical facility. I should also point out that there was a deleted scene from this episode that revealed that Bill was a schizophrenic who had been in love with Mr. Drummond's late wife Lydia 2 decades prior and had asked her to marry him, but she had turned him down for Philip, and this is what led to his warped fascination with Kimberly, who is the daughter of the woman that he loved and the man that he hated. Gen X kids in the early 80s who were at the perfect age for Sesame Street got blindsided on a major holiday in 1983 with the episode colloquially titled Farewell, Mr. Hooper. Since this very special episode intertwined TV with real life, I wanted to give a more detailed backstory just in case you weren't around at the time. This episode was a loving tribute to actor Will Lee, who started playing the role of Mr. Hooper on Sesame Street when the show premiered in 1969. He was an absolute staple on the PBS series throughout the 70s and into the early 80s, appearing in dozens of the regular episodes of Sesame Street as well as their TV specials. According to the New York Times, Lee as Mr. Hooper was so popular and well known among small children at the time, thanks to his signature bow tie and horn-rimmed reading glasses, that they would literally approach him on the street and ask him questions and quietly whisper things like, "I love you." He was by far the most recognized live cast member on Sesame Street. So when Lee died of a heart attack on December 7th, 1982, the producers at Sesame Street and the Children's Television Workshop had some tough choices to make. How do you address the death of a popular actor on a kids' television show? Different ideas were considered, including having the character move away or retire. They even thought about recasting the role. But then they realized it would be best for Mr. Hooper to die and take the opportunity to address the topic of death. Lee had taped his final segments 2 weeks before he passed away, and it was ultimately decided to use that last appearance footage as a focal point for episode 1839, which aired on Thanksgiving Day, 1983, almost 1 year to the day after Lee passed away. In the Farewell, Mr. Hooper episode, the character's death is explained by the adults on the show to Big Bird, who is extremely close to Mr. Hooper. The scene begins as Big Bird draws pictures of his friends, and when he draws Mr. Hooper, he has to be reminded that Mr. Hooper died.
Big Bird, when people die, they don't come back. Ever? No, never.
The segment included cast members in tears as they grieved the loss of both Will Lee and Mr. Hooper, and the broadcast ended with a picture of Lee along with his dates of birth and death and the note, "In loving memory of Will Lee." This segment was adapted into a children's book titled I'll Miss You, Mr. Hooper. It was also named one of the 10 most influential moments in daytime television history by the Daytime Emmys.
Turn around, I see the girl who turns my world around.
If there was ever a very special episode of television that every 80s kid could relate to, it was the episode of Punky Brewster titled Accidents Happen, the final episode from season 2 that aired on March 9th, 1986. This episode was all about Punky's dream of becoming an astronaut when she grows up, and it begins with her telling her class all about her dream when making an inspiring presentation during career day at school. But as every Gen Xer knows, on January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded while millions of American children watched on TV.
I'm gonna bring my television and we can all watch the launch together. Would you like that? Yeah!
Teachers around the country rolled TVs into their classroom to watch the Challenger launch because civilian teacher Krista McAuliffe was on board and she was going to give a lesson from space. It was supposed to be the culmination of a months long program that many schools had opted into. So, like all 80s kids who watched the Challenger explosion, Punky was devastated. While America mourned, Punky was hit especially hard, and Mike steps up to try to help her and her classmates understand the tragedy. Punky still dreams of becoming an astronaut, but everyone else in the class thinks she's nuts. Mike sees what's going on and he doesn't want Punky's dream to die, so he calls in astronaut Buzz Aldrin to have a talk with Punky and convince her to keep pursuing her dreams. At the end, Buzz makes Punky a member of the Young Astronauts and she decides to keep pursuing her space dreams. In case you didn't catch the dates, this episode aired 6 weeks after the Challenger explosion, and apparently it was based on Salil Moonfry's real-life reaction to the national tragedy. This episode marked the last appearance of Mike because it was the last one to air on NBC before Punky Brewster was canceled from the network and moved to syndication. It was also the last appearance of the younger Punky. When she returned for the syndicated episodes, she had gone through a growth spurt and entered her preteen years. Of course, we had to have another episode of Mr. Belvedere. In my first very special episode video, this beloved 80s sitcom tackled the topic of AIDS. And this time, the taboo subject from the season 4 episode titled The Counselor is molestation. The episode is all about Wesley going to summer camp, where he encounters an assistant camp counselor named Perry, who behaves quite inappropriately towards Wesley.
Here, let me give you a hand. Don't want you to catch cold. Whoa, getting goosebumps.
I'm gonna go change over there.
Wesley takes a stand and reports Perry's behavior, and when his family finds out what happened, they are worried about the impact this traumatic experience could have. By the end of the episode, he does return to his mischievous self, but the episode doesn't end in regular fashion with Mr. Belvedere writing in his journal. Instead, star Bryce Beckham, who played Wesley, and Christopher Hewitt, who played Mr. Belvedere, addressed kid viewers directly, advising them to watch out for chomos, and they taught them what to do if they ever encountered one.
Hello, I'm Christopher Hewitt.
And I'm Bryce Beckham.
Usually at this time, you would find Mr. Belvedere at his desk, writing about the antics of the Owens family. But due to the special theme of tonight's episode, we thought we'd do something a little different.
Yeah. We figured we'd talk to you kids and your parents, too, about something that's kind of hard to talk about.
Tonight's episode about Wesley didn't really happen. But if ever you find yourself in a situation like that, there are certain things you should remember.
No one should ever touch you in a way that makes you feel bad. And if they do, tell someone you trust, like your mom or your dad.
And remember, if you have to keep a secret that makes you feel bad, it's not worth keeping.
Yeah.
Thank you, and good night from us all at Mr. Belvedere.
During the final season of Little House on the Prairie, Michael Landon's Charles Ingalls returned to Walnut Grove for a visit with his adopted son Albert in a 2-part very special episode titled Home Again. The Ingalls had moved away to the big city after Laura got married, but the city life wasn't good for Albert. He had gotten mixed up with the wrong crowd and started to get into trouble, which is why Charles wanted to bring him back to Walnut Grove. He was trying to correct Albert's bad behavior and get him back on the straight and narrow, praying the small town had a positive effect. But things didn't go as Charles had planned. Albert had no interest in being set straight, and he didn't want to be in Walnut Grove. It turns out Albert had gotten addicted to morphine, and Charles didn't know it. So when Albert found himself in a situation to steal Dr. Baker's morphine stash, he went for it. When Charles realizes how bad Albert's drug problem is after a discussion with Doc Baker, he forces Albert to detox in a series of scenes that are incredibly difficult to watch. It's quite the ordeal, as detoxing from drugs can be, but Charles stays by his son's side to help him through it, realizing that the problem is way worse than he ever imagined. Finally, Albert recovers from his addiction, and Charles decides to go back home with Albert, as Laura tells the audience in a voiceover that Albert would later become a doctor. But as a Little House superfan, I must tell you that in another episode, or actually a Little House on the Prairie special movie, Albert went back to Walnut Grove and was sick with leukemia, and they implied that he died. But we never saw him die, so to this day, it is truly up in the air whether or not the fictional character became a doctor or died young.
Different strokes it takes, different strokes to move the world.
The plot for the season 8 premiere of Different Strokes, titled Sam's Missing, is so egregiously dark and narrow in focus that it's not entirely clear what the moral of the episode is, other than that sometimes life is an unthinkable nightmare. The episode starts when Arnold gets a new stepbrother, Sam, and immediately begins bossing him around by making him run errands for him. On one of these errands, Sam meets a man whose family is in an emotional tailspin due to the fact that their son was recently killed in some kind of accident. He convinces Sam that he needs help finding his lost dog, which is actually just a ruse to take Sam home as a replacement for his dead son. Worst of all, when Sam objects about the 2-hour drive, the kidnapper tells him that his family will be harmed if he doesn't cooperate. The man introduces Sam to the rest of the family, and just like in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it turns out they're all crazy. The father makes up a story about finding him in a box, and the rest of the family agrees that sounds like reason enough to keep him. Sam ends up staying with his family for about a week, while Mr. Drummond goes on television and offers a $50,000 reward for Sam's return, along with a tearful plea to the kidnappers to do the right thing. Over the next few days, Sam tries to keep from having a mental breakdown with his new family. When he has trouble showing affection or any emotion other than fear, which is always, he gets more threats of what will happen to his real family if he doesn't cooperate.
You get this straight, Sam. This is your family from now on. And stay away from that telephone. You step out of line just once. You remember what I told you I would do? I will kill your parents, Sam.
But...
You hear me and understand me.
Yes, sir.
But it gets worse. Sam's real family then gets a call after 5 days from someone claiming to have the boy, but it just turns out to be a crazy ex-convict trying to claim the ransom money. Gosh, just thinking about watching this all unfold as a 9-year-old kid. Gosh. Eventually, Mr. Drummond figures out where the boy is and comes to the rescue. The police burst in and rescue Sam while the kidnapper's family mentally unravels, only proving that even people who have never done anything wrong still get mentally tortured for no reason. In the end, Sam is finally returned home, and the entire family goes back to being happy and normal. The Hogan family, originally titled Valerie before the title character was killed off by the network at the start of the 3rd season in 1988, ultimately revolved around 3 teenage brothers, the oldest played by Jason Bateman, who were being raised in Oak Park, Illinois by their airline pilot father and their paternal Aunt Sandy. Just like most TV sitcoms of the time, the Hogan family tackled social issues in very special episodes, and in the show's 6th and final season, an episode titled Best of Friends, Worst of Times raised awareness and educated the audience about HIV/AIDS. This episode aired on World AIDS Day, December 1st, 1990, and the plot followed Bateman's character David as he filmed a documentary at a hospital for a school project. That's where he runs into his best friend Rich, and after exchanging hugs and pleasantries, David finds out that Rich is battling AIDS. David struggles to come to terms with the news that Rich is dying from AIDS complications, and when he tells his Aunt Sandy, played by Sandy Duncan, she offers to accompany him to the hospital for a visit, but David is polarized by shock and fear. Recognizing this confusion that David is experiencing, Sandy discloses how she once allowed fear and paranoia to prevent her from showing up for a friend who is dying of AIDS complications. So she urges David to visit Rich and show up for his friend. The episode concludes with David speaking at a high school assembly on HIV/AIDS, where he shares how he worked through his fear and preconceived notions about HIV by educating himself. He also dispels myths about HIV and informs students about the importance of safer sex. At the end, David breaks the news, through tears, that Rich had died the night before. Then he eulogizes his friend that changed his life.
Rich died last night. And he wasn't famous. And he didn't change the world. He was just a regular guy, you know, that let me into his life. And for that, I'll always be grateful.
On the original CBS broadcast, before the end credits, Bateman did a PSA segment titled AIDS Facts for Life and provided the AIDS National Hotline number. Then a version of That's What Friends Are For played during the end credits with clips of Rich from previous episodes. In the season 5 episode of Roseanne titled Crime and Punishment, we got a very special episode that quite honestly had a moment that made Dan Connor one of the hottest men on TV. The episode began with Roseanne sensing that something was off with her sister Jackie. Instead of her normal easygoing self, Jackie had become a bit uptight and jumpy and ended up crying and having a tantrum during a disagreement with Roseanne, which got her wondering what was going on with her sister. It's revealed later in the episode when Darlene accidentally walks in on Jackie changing her shirt in the bathroom that Jackie's back is covered in dark bruises. Jackie yells at Darlene and she leaves immediately, which again has Roseanne puzzled. When Darlene tells her mom what she saw, she is sent from the room and Roseanne confronts her sister.
Why can't you just drop it? That son of a bitch. You don't understand. He beat the crap. No, he didn't. It's no big deal. It's no big deal? What are you saying?
The shocking scene continues with Dan walking in and seeing a crying Jackie hugging Roseanne, and she tells him that Fisher has beaten the hell out of her. Roseanne takes Jackie to the hospital, and then comes the moment that makes Dan Connor a legend.
What happened?
Fisher beat the crap out of her.
What?
I'm all right. I don't want anybody to know about it.
The episode ends with Dan walking into the Connor house with a bucket of fried chicken and swollen knuckles. Roseanne then says, "Oh God, Dan, you didn't kill him and go out for chicken afterwards, did you?" Police officers who are friends of Dan's then show up to arrest him and take him to jail. And in the next episode titled War and Peace, Darlene is sent to the jail to bail Dan out, and Roseanne finds out the truth about Fisher and Jackie's relationship. Honestly, in my opinion, these are two of the best episodes of Roseanne ever made.
It's alright, 'cause I'm saved by the bell.
My friends, we have finally made it to the most infamous, very special episode of our Gen X childhood. And I'm sure there are a few millennials in there who remember this iconic episode as well. There was absolutely no way I could do another very special episode video and not mention Jesse's song from Saved by the Bell. Honestly, the only reason I didn't include it the first time was because the episode aired in the 90s and I focused on the 80s the first time around. Anyways, the iconic Jesse's song was a season 2 episode of Saved by the Bell that attempted to, as Elizabeth Berkley explained, explore something different on a Saturday morning show, and they were going to go deep. Berkley told The Ringer that as a young actress, she was finally going to have something juicy, and all the others felt the same way. They were like, oh wow, we're going to really act this week. It's not just going to be who's asking who to the dance. What she didn't realize, though, that episode of Jesse's song in which her character, overachiever Jessie Spano, developed an addiction to caffeine pills to keep pace with her hectic schedule, would still be part of the pop culture zeitgeist more than 30 years later. You know the moment. You know that Jessie ends up melting down in her bedroom in front of her friend Zach Morris and yelping a mangled lyric from the chorus of a Pointer Sisters song. Do I even have to say it?
I'm so excited! I'm so excited! I'm so scared!
Jessie.
The crazy thing is, there's so much more to this episode than just that iconic scene. In a ridiculously jam-packed span of 22 minutes, Zach persuades Jessie and her friends Kelly Kapowski and Lisa Turtle to form a singing girl group, and then Samuel Screech Powers dresses in drag to record the girls singing in the locker room to covertly use it as a makeshift demo, and then that said group, now named Hot Sunday, films a low-rent music video to impress a record producer friend of Zach's dad. Whew, did you get all that? Oh wait, there's more. AC Slater helps Jessie study for a geometry test and implores her to stop taking the pills. And then Zach and Slater fight over whether or not Jessie has a problem. And then Jessie breaks down and finally admits that she does have a problem. Whew, okay. Of course, Jessie's dependency issues were resolved by the next episode, actually the end of this one. But the legend lives on to this day in the form of gifts, kitschy t-shirts, and even musicals. Wow, I've been talking for a long time about way too many dark episodes of television. It's time to stop. Thanks so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if you're feeling it, please click the join button and become a channel member. That would be freaking sweet. I'd love to have ya. Okay, bye.